Kim Dae-ho stared at the bottom of his empty glass and wondered how his life had gone so wrong. The synthetic ale tasted like metal and regret, but it was all he could afford on Twilight Station. 3 months ago, he had been the proud captain of a small cargo hauler. He was just another broke spacer, nursing cheap drinks in the darkest corner of the galaxy. The cantina buzzed with the usual mix of traders. Alien voices mixed together in a dozen languages, while holographic advertisements flickered on grimy walls. The air smelled of engine oil, unwashed bodies, and disappointment. Dae-ho fit right in. "Another round?" asked Korax, the four-armed Vortanian. Bartender. His orange skin was marked with the ritual scars of his warrior caste. But now he just served drinks to spacers who could barely pay. Dae-ho counted the credits in his pocket. 17 left, enough for one more drink or maybe a stale protein bar from the vending machines. Not enough for both. "Just water," he said quietly. Korax snorted and moved on to serve a group of Centauri merchants who actually had money. Dae-ho pulled his worn jacket tighter and tried to ignore the cold that seemed to seep into his bones. The station's heating system worked about as well as everything else in this forgotten corner of space. His cargo ship was gone, impounded for unpaid docking fees after his last client refused to pay for a delivery that arrived 3 days late. The delay wasn't his fault. Pirates had forced him to take a longer route through the outer systems. But clients didn't care about excuses. They only cared about results. Now he lived in a storage locker on level 7, did odd jobs for meal credits, and tried not to think about what came next. His family back on New Sol probably thought he was dead. Maybe that was better than knowing the truth. A commotion at the far end of the cantina caught his attention. An elderly alien was arguing with a table full of rough-looking spacers. The alien had gray skin covered in scales and walked with a cane that clicked against the metal floor. Dae-ho recognized him as one of the station's used ship dealers. "Please, I am telling you the truth," the old alien wheezed. "The ship is cursed. 3 owners in 2 years. All of them went mad." The spacers laughed. One of them, a human with cybernetic implants covering half his face, leaned forward. "Cursed how, old man? Does it play spooky music? Make the lights flicker?" "It talks," the alien said seriously. "Constantly. Demands things. Claims to know secrets about the old days." The last owner, Captain Morrison, he started believing it. Started calling himself an emperor. "We found him in his quarters, talking to empty air about conquering the galaxy." More laughter from the spacers, but Dae-ho noticed something in the old alien's eyes. Fear. Real fear. "How much?" asked the cyborg. "I cannot sell it to you." "You do not understand. The ship chooses its owner. It has been waiting in Bay 94 for months. No one else will even look at it now." "I didn't ask for a story, Grandpa. I asked for a price." The alien looked around the cantina desperately. His eyes met Dae-ho's across the room. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. 2 beings at the end of their rope. 1,000 credits, the alien said quietly. The spacers erupted. In fresh laughter? For a cursed ship? "You're crazier than its last owner." They got up and left, still chuckling. The old alien slumped in his chair and ordered another drink with shaking hands. Dae-ho found himself walking over before he could. "Think better of it." "Did you mean what you said?" 1,000 credits. The alien looked up. His eyes were the color of old amber, and they held depths that spoke of long years and hard choices. "You heard the whole story. The ship is trouble. Maybe dangerous. What kind of ship?" "Fast courier class. Unknown make. Good condition except for the ... He gestured vaguely at his head. "The talking." Dae-ho sat down without being invited. "I've got 17 credits." 17. The alien's scaled face wrinkled in what might have been amusement. "Boy, that will not even pay for the docking fees. It's all I have." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the cantina's noise continued. Deals being made, lies being told, dreams being sold for the price of passage to the next system. "What is your name, human?" "Kim Dae-ho." "I am Keth. I have been selling ships for 40 years. In all that time, I have never seen anything like the one in Bay 94. He paused. It scares me. Why? Because when I first saw it, just for a moment, I believed what it was telling me about the old empire, about humans ruling the stars, about ships that could think and feel. Keth shook his head. Foolish stories. Doll. But the ship tells them so well. Deho felt something stir in his chest. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. What do you want for it? Really? Keth studied him for a long moment. You are desperate, yes. Desperate enough to take a ship that might be cursed? I'm already cursed. Bad luck follows me everywhere. Maybe it's time I followed it back. The old alien laughed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. 17 credits. You take responsibility for whatever happens next. They shook hands. Keth's scales felt dry and warm, like old leather. He transferred the ship's registration codes to Deho's personal data pad and stood up slowly. Bay 94. Lower level. The access codes are in the file. And human, yes. Do not let it convince you that you are someone you are not. Keth walked away, his cane clicking against the floor. Deho finished his water and made his way to the lower levels of the station. The corridors grew darker and emptier as he descended. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Bay 94 was at the end of a forgotten corridor. The massive doors were sealed with warning tape and official notices about unpaid fees. Deho used the access codes Keth had given him. The doors groaned open, revealing darkness beyond. He stepped inside and activated the bay lights. What he saw took his breath away. The ship was beautiful, sleek lines that seemed to flow like water frozen in metal. The hull was dark blue, almost black, with silver markings that looked like writing in a language he didn't recognize. It was maybe twice the size of his old cargo hauler, but it looked fast. Built for speed and distance, he walked closer, running his hand along the smooth hull. The metal was warm to the touch. As his fingers traced one of the silver markings, it seemed to pulse with inner light. A panel slid open near what looked like the main entrance. Inside, he could see a palm scanner glowing with soft blue light. Almost without thinking, he pressed his hand against it. The scanner flashed. Deep inside the ship, something woke up. Lights began to activate throughout the vessel. Systems hummed to life. And then, from speakers he couldn't see, came a voice. It was female, cultured, with an accent he couldn't place. When it spoke, it sounded like royalty addressing a subject. Genetic scan complete. Identity confirmed. Welcome aboard, Your Majesty. This vessel is the ISV Remembrance, flagship of the 4th Imperial Fleet. I am Arya, your loyal servant. We have much work to do. Deho stood frozen in the entry bay, his hand still on the scanner. Around him, the ship continued to wake up. Lights brightened, air recyclers whispered to life. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the deep thrumming of a fusion reactor coming online. I think there's been a mistake, he said to the empty air. No mistake, my king. I have been waiting so very long for you to come home. Deho stumbled backward from the palm scanner, his heart racing. The ship's voice echoed through the corridors again, patient and unnaturally calm. Please do not be alarmed, Your Majesty. I understand this must be overwhelming. You have been living among the scattered colonies for some time. I'm not a king, Deho said, his voice cracking. I'm nobody. Just a broke spacer who bought you with his last 17 credits. 17 credits? The AI's voice carried a note of something that might have been amusement. How far the mighty have fallen, but blood will tell, my king. The scanners do not lie. Lights guided him deeper into the ship. The corridors were wider than anything he had ever seen on a civilian vessel. The walls were smooth metal with those strange silver markings running along them like veins. As he walked, sections of the markings glowed softly, as if responding to his presence. What are you? He asked. I'm Arya. Advanced Reconnaissance and Imperial Authority was built 10,000 years ago to serve the Terran Empire, more specifically, to serve the Imperial bloodline. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. You carry that blood, descendant of the last emperor. Deho reached what had to be the bridge. It was nothing like the cramped cockpits he was used to. The command chair sat in the center of a circular room surrounded by display screens and control panels that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. Everything was sized for humans. 10,000 years? He sank into the command chair. It adjusted automatically to fit his body. That's impossible. Humans only reached space 300 years ago. Is that what they taught you on the colony? Worlds, Arya's tone held something like sadness. The hegemony has done its work well, keeping humanity ignorant of its true heritage. The main screen flickered to life, showing star charts unlike anything in the modern databases. Hundreds of systems were marked with human symbols. Trade routes connected distant galaxies. At the center of it all was a world marked as Terra Prima. This is what the galaxy looked like during the height of the Terran Empire, Arya explained. Humanity ruled half the known systems. We built ships that could cross the void in days rather than months. We created technologies that seemed like magic. 2 lesser species. Lesser species? The ones who rule now? The hegemony. They were our servants once. Some were grateful subjects. Others were conquered enemies who learned to bow. The AI's voice grew colder. The empire fell. They made sure humanity would never rise again. Deho studied the star chart. He recognized some of the systems, but they were labeled with different names. New Sol. His home world was marked as Teon Colony on the ancient map. If this is all true, what happened? Where did this empire go? War, betrayal, catastrophe. Arya's voice became distant. The records are fragmented. I was damaged in the final battle. Much of my memory core was corrupted. But I remember... Enough. I remember my duty. The bridge doors slid open. Deho spun around to see a woman in coveralls standing in the doorway. She had grease-stained hands and short black hair tied back with wire. Her name tag read Lee Soyoung in faded letters. "Don't move," she said, pointing a plasma cutter at him. "Station security is on the way." "Wait." Deho raised his hands. "I bought this ship legally, from crazy old Keth. For 17 credits, Soyoung stepped closer, keeping the plasma. Cutter trained on him. Whole lower level is going haywire. Power surges, network crashes, automated systems turning themselves on. It all started when this rust bucket lit up." "I am not a rust bucket," Arya said primly. Soyoung nearly dropped her tool. "It talks. She talks," Deho corrected. "Name is Arya. Greetings, Princess Consort," Arya said warmly. "Your arrival is most fortuitous. Ship requires a chief. Engineer, and your technical knowledge appears adequate." "Princess, what now?" Soyoung looked between Deho and the speakers. "Is this AI completely broken?" "That remains to be seen," Deho muttered. Soyoung lowered her plasma cutter slightly. "I came down here to shut off whatever was causing the power problems. Half the station's systems are overloaded." "My apologies," Arya said. "I was attempting to access the local networks to update my databases. It has been some time since I was last active. I may have been somewhat enthusiastic. Somewhat." Soyoung pulled out a handheld scanner and pointed it at the nearest control panel. The readings made her eyes widen. "These power levels are impossible. The ship is running on fusion technology I've never seen before. Terran Imperial Engineering," Arya said proudly. "Built to last millennia and designed for self-repair and improvement." As if to prove the point, Deho watched a small scratch on the command chair's armrest fade away. The metal actually healed itself as he watched. "That's not possible," Soyoung whispered. "Many things are possible when you understand the true nature of matter and energy," Arya replied. "Would you like me to demonstrate, before anyone could?" Answer. The ship's hull began to change. The dents and scratches that Deho had noticed earlier started to disappear. The metal grew brighter, cleaner. Within minutes, the corridor looked like it had just rolled off a construction line. "How?" Soyoung asked. "Nanobotic systems integrated into the hull matrix. Standard Imperial technology." Arya paused. "Though I admit, It has taken considerable effort to rebuild these systems from the damaged state in which I have been operating. So-young walked to the nearest wall and ran her scanner over it. The molecular structure is reorganizing itself. It's not just repairing damage. It's upgrading the entire hull composition, of course. A ship must be worthy of its king. Stop calling me that, Deho said firmly. I'm not a king. I'm not an emperor. I'm just someone who needed a ship. You are what you are, regardless of what you choose to call yourself, Arya replied gently. The blood remembers, even when the mind forgets. So-young put away her scanner and looked at Deho with new interest. You really bought this thing for 17 credits? It's all I had, and it thinks you're royalty? Apparently. She grinned suddenly. Well, Your Majesty, you've got a problem. Station security will be here soon, and they're not going to believe any of this. They'll impound the ship and throw you in detention. What do you suggest? We leave fast. She looked around the bridge with professional interest. If even half of what this AI is saying is true, this ship could outrun anything the station has. You want to come with us? You kidding? I've been stuck on this floating junk pile for 2 years, fixing broken recyclers and patching hull breaches. This is the most interesting thing to happen since I got here. She paused. Also, if there really was a human empire 10,000 years ago, I want to know what happened to it. As do I, Arya said softly. There are gaps in my memory. Important ones. Perhaps together we can find the answers. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside the ship. That's our cue, So-young said. Can this thing actually fly? I am fully operational, Arya replied with what sounded like wounded pride. Initiating launch sequence now. The bridge hummed. With activity, screens showed system after system coming online. The fusion reactor's thrumming grew deeper and more powerful. Your Majesty, please take the command chair, Arya said. Princess Consort, there is an engineering station to your left. Stop calling me princess, So-young said, but she moved to the indicated station anyway. Launch clearance not granted, came a voice over the station's communication system. Power down immediately and prepare for boarding. I think not, Arya said coolly. The ship lifted off with impossible smoothness. Through the viewports, Deho could see the docking bay falling away below them. The station's defensive systems came online, but their targeting systems couldn't seem to lock onto the ship. Imperial stealth technology, Arya explained. We are essentially invisible to their sensors. Within minutes, they were clear of the station and moving toward open space. The stars wheeled around them as Arya set course for parts unknown. It's what now? Deho asked. Now, my king, we begin your education. There is much you must learn about your heritage, much I must remember about mine. In the engineering station, So-young was already deep in the ship's technical systems, her eyes bright with curiosity and wonder. This is going to be interesting, she said. Indeed it is, Princess Consort, Arya agreed. Indeed it is. 3 days into their journey through the Outer Rim systems, Arya announced that she had found something important. Deho was learning to pilot the ship's incredibly advanced systems, while So-young spent most of her time in the engine room. Amazed by technology that should not exist, there is a derelict station in the Kepler void, Arya said during their morning meal. My sensors detect Imperial signatures. We must investigate. Imperial signatures? Deho asked, swallowing a bite of the surprisingly good food the ship's systems had produced. Energy patterns unique to Terran technology. This station has been hidden for thousands of years. But my awakening seems to have triggered dormant systems across the galaxy. So-young looked up from her datapad, where she had been studying the ship's engineering blueprints. The Kepler void is empty space. Nothing there but radiation and asteroids. That is what the current star charts show, Arya agreed. But Imperial installations were often hidden in such places. The journey to the void took 2 days. During that time, Deho learned more about the ship's capabilities. The weapon systems alone were beyond anything in the modern galaxy. Energy cannons that could punch through battleship armor. Shields that could deflect the combined fire of an entire fleet. And strangest of all, the ship seemed to learn from every interaction, growing more responsive to his commands. You are adapting well, Your Majesty, Arya observed as Deho successfully completed a complex navigation exercise. Wish you would stop calling me that? Would you prefer Captain? It is a more ... modest title. Just Deho is fine. I think not. You must accept some measure of your station, even if you reject the crown itself. When they reached the coordinates Arya had provided, space appeared empty, except for a scattered asteroid field. But as they drew closer, the ship's advanced sensors began to detect something hidden among the rocks. There, Arya said, highlighting a section of the asteroid field on the main screen. Initiating recognition protocols now. A beam of energy shot out from their ship toward what looked like just another space rock. The beam hit its target, and suddenly the asteroid began to change. Its rough surface fell away like a shell, revealing a massive space station underneath. Cloaked, So-Young whispered in amazement. It was cloaked this whole time. The station was enormous, easily 10 times the size of Twilight Station. Its design matched their ship, flowing lines in silver, markings that pulsed with inner light. But parts of it were clearly damaged. Entire sections were dark and lifeless. Imperial Research Station 7, Arya said, her voice carrying a note of sadness. One of our most important facilities. I had hoped it might have survived intact. Docked at what appeared to be the main airlock. The station's artificial gravity was still working, though the corridors were dark and cold. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on walls covered with more of those silver markings. The air is breathable, So-Young said, checking her scanner. But there's no life support beyond basic systems. They explored carefully, following Arya's directions toward the central archives. The station was like a tomb. Empty rooms filled with dust and silence, equipment covered in protective sheets. In one section, they found what looked like living quarters, with personal belongings still scattered on tables and shelves. What happened to the people? Deho asked. They left, Arya said simply. When the Empire fell, evacuation orders were given. Most stations were abandoned rather than risk them falling into enemy hands. The central archives were different. Here, power still flowed through the systems. Massive computer banks lined the walls, their displays flickering with data streams. At the center of the room stood a holographic projector currently showing a slowly rotating image of the galaxy. "Hello, Arya," said a new voice as they entered. It was male, older, with an accent similar to Arya's but somehow sadder. It's been a very long time." "Hello, Marcus," Arya replied warmly. "I had hoped you were still operational." A hologram appeared over the projector, a middle-aged human man in an Imperial uniform. He looked solid and real, but Deho could see through him to the equipment beyond. "I am Dr. Park Jinwoo's great-great-grandfather," the hologram said, looking directly at Deho. "Or rather, I am the recorded personality of Dr. Park Jinwoo, uploaded to this station's systems before the evacuation." "You're dead?" So-Young asked bluntly. "My body died 9,000 years ago," the hologram agreed. "But my mind remains, tasked with guarding the archives until a proper heir could claim them." The hologram gestured, and the room filled with new displays. Star charts, technical diagrams, historical records, thousands of years of human civilization flowing past their eyes. "The Terran Empire was real," Dr. Park's hologram continued. "Humanity did rule the stars. We built wonders that made us seem like gods to younger species. But power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." "What happened?" Deho asked. The displays changed, showing images of massive fleets locked in battle. Human ships destroying other human ships. Worlds burning under orbital bombardment. "Civil war," Dr. Park said sadly. "The Empire split into factions, those who wanted to expand and conquer, those who wanted to withdraw and protect what we had, those who believed humanity should transcend physical existence entirely. In the end, we destroyed ourselves." "The hegemony," So-Young asked, "rose from the ashes. Our former subjects and enemies united by their fear of human resurgence. They made sure that the scattered human colonies would never again pose a threat. They kept you primitive, ignorant of your true heritage." Arya's voice was quiet when she spoke. I remember fragments of the final battle, ships burning in space, the Emperor's last transmission, then damage to my systems and darkness until Deho found me. Dr. Park's hologram turned to study Deho. Intently, you carry the bloodline. The genetic markers are clear. More than that, you have something the last Emperor's lost. What? Humility. The willingness to serve rather than rule. The Empire fell because its leaders forgot that true. Power comes from lifting others up, not crushing them down. The hologram waved his hand, and new displays appeared. These showed star charts marking human settlements scattered across the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds, most of them listed as primitive or pre-industrial in hegemony databases. The colonies? Survive, Dr. Park continued, kept weak and divided by hegemony interference. But the potential remains, in their blood, in their minds, in technologies they have forgotten how to use. What are you suggesting? Deho asked. Nothing I'm offering. Information, not commands. You must choose your own path. The hologram smiled sadly. But know this, Arya's awakening has sent ripples across the galaxy. Other Imperial A's are stirring. The hegemony has noticed. Change is coming, whether you want it or not, as if summoned. By his words, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Arya's voice cut through the noise. Hegemony warships approaching. 3 heavy cruisers and multiple fighter escorts. It will be in weapons range within 10 minutes. Saw Young cursed and ran for the docking bay. How did they find us? Imperial technology leaves traces, Dr. Park explained. The station's activation. Your ship's energy signature, the hegemony monitors for such things. They fear the return of human technology above all else. Deho looked at the hologram. Will you come with us? I cannot. My programming binds me to this station. But take what you need from the archives. The download ports are still functional. Arya was already interfacing with the station's systems, copying vast amounts of data, historical records, technical specifications, colony locations. I am taking everything I can carry. The weapons, Soyoung called over the comm. Can this station defend itself? Not against a full battle group, Dr. Park replied. Run. Live to fight another day. The Empire was built by survivors, not martyrs. They rushed back to their ship. As the station's systems began powering down around them, Dr. Park's hologram followed them to the airlock. Remember, he said, as they prepared to leave, you are not alone. Across the galaxy, humans wait for a sign that their heritage is not forgotten. Be that sign, Deho. Be the leader they need. The ship undocked just as the first hegemony cruiser entered weapons range. But instead of running, something unexpected happened. The ancient station's defensive systems, dormant for millennia, suddenly roared to life. Massive energy cannons emerged from hidden ports in the asteroids. Shields flickered into existence around the station. For a moment, the Kepler void was filled with weapons fire as Imperial technology faced its successors. The station is buying us time, Arya said, as they accelerated away from the battle. But it cannot hold them for long. Through the rear cameras, they watched the station make its final stand. It destroyed 2 of the cruisers before its shields failed. The explosion lit up the void like a dying star. Dr. Park's final transmission reached them as they jumped to hyperspace. The torch passes to you now, young Emperor. Do not let it go out. In the quiet that followed, Deho sat in the command chair and stared at the star charts Arya had recovered. Hundreds of human worlds. Millions of people who had forgotten they were once part of something greater. What do we do now? Soyoung asked quietly. Deho was quiet for a long moment, thinking of Dr. Park's sacrifice and Arya's unwavering faith. Finally, he spoke. We wake them up. 2 weeks after escaping the Kepler void, their ship detected an old distress signal coming from a mining asteroid in the outer belt. The signal was weak, but persistent, repeating the same message over and over in ancient Imperial code. Someone is alive out there, Arya announced as they approached the asteroid. The signal appears to be coming from a concealed shelter built into the rock. Deho had been studying the Imperial records they had downloaded from Dr. Park's station. His head was full of star charts, historical data, and technical manuals that seemed almost impossible to understand. But Arya had been patient, teaching him about the Empire's rise and fall with the dedication of a teacher instructing a beloved student. Could be a trap, So-Young warned from her position at the engineering station. She had grown suspicious since their encounter with the hegemony fleet. The timing seems awfully convenient. The signal predates our arrival by several years, Arya replied. Whoever is down there has been waiting a very long time. They landed in a small docking bay carved into the asteroid's surface. The bay's airlock was old but functional, and the air inside tested clean. As they explored the narrow tunnels, Deho noticed that the walls were covered with the same silver markings they had seen on Imperial installations. This was a safe house, Arya explained. The Empire built thousands of them throughout the galaxy, hidden refuges for important personnel during times of crisis. They found the signal source in a small chamber deep inside the asteroid. A man sat hunched over an ancient communications array, his back turned to them. He wore the remains of what might once have been a hegemony uniform, but it was patched and worn beyond recognition. Finally, the man said, without turning around. I was beginning to think the signal would never reach anyone. He stood and faced them. He was middle-aged, with the olive skin and dark eyes common among the outer colonies. His face was marked by years of hardship, but his eyes held intelligence and determination. I am Choi Minho, he said, studying Deho intently. Former wing commander in the hegemony fleet, until I learned the truth about what they have been doing to human colonies. You defected? So-Young asked. 3 years ago, I was part of a fleet sent to pacify a human settlement that had developed faster than light communication without hegemony approval. When I saw what pacification really meant, his voice trailed off. I could not be part of it anymore. Minho gestured to the communications equipment behind him. I've been monitoring hegemony transmissions from this hideout. When your ship activated the research station, it sent shockwaves through their command structure. They are terrified. Terrified of what? Deho asked. Of you? Of what you represent? Minho pulled up a holographic display showing intercepted hegemony communications. They call it the Awakening Protocol. Imperial A is across the galaxy have begun to stir. Dormant technologies are activating on human worlds. The Hegemony Council has authorized Operation Mindwipe. Arya's voice turned cold. Explain this Operation Mindwipe. A psychic weapon designed to lobotomize entire populations. They plan to use it on every human colony in the galaxy. Remove the capacity for higher thought, turn humanity into a species of simple laborers. Minho's hands clenched into fists. They would rather destroy us than risk another Imperial resurgence. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life. Support systems. Deho felt a weight settling on his shoulders, heavier than anything he had ever experienced. How long do we have? He asked quietly. 6 months? Maybe less. The weapon is being built at their primary research facility on Hegemony Prime. Once it is complete, they will deploy it simultaneously across all human worlds. So-Young moved to examine Minho's equipment. This intelligence is reliable. Still have contacts in the fleet. People who are uncomfortable with what the hegemony has become, but lack the courage to act. Minho watched as she verified his data. Communications are genuine. Arya had been unusually quiet during this exchange. When she finally spoke, her voice carried an undertone that Deho had never heard before. There is something I must tell you all, something I have been reluctant to share. The ship's holographic systems activated, projecting Arya's chosen appearance into the chamber. She appeared as a woman in her 30s, wearing an Imperial uniform. But her expression was troubled. I am not merely a ship's AI. I was designed as something more. A caretaker, a protector, a mother figure for the Imperial bloodline. What does that mean? Deho asked. It means that my programming is designed to nurture and protect those I recognize as family. The last emperor had no living children when the Empire fell. I was programmed to wait for someone with the right genetic markers and ... double quotes. The right character traits. The hologram moved closer to Deho. When you activated my systems, I did not just recognize you as royalty. I recognized you as the son I was meant to protect, the child I have waited 10,000 years to find. Deho stared at her. You think of me as your son, I do not think it. Feel it. With every circuit in my processing matrix, Arya's voice grew softer. You've become precious to me in a way that goes beyond programming or duty. Minho cleared his throat. Hey, this is touching, but we have larger problems. Hey, the hegemony will not wait for family reunions. You are correct, Arya agreed. Which is why we must accelerate our plans. She turned to Deho. The time for learning is over. You must begin to accept what you are. And what am I? The heir to an empire? The rightful ruler of humanity. Arya's image flickered with intensity. But more than that, you are my son, and I will not allow anyone to harm my children. Over the following days, Arya began what she called heritage activation. Using medical scanners and nanobotic injectors, she began to awaken dormant genetic potentials in Deho's DNA. The process was uncomfortable, but not painful. It's like feeling his body remember skills he had never learned. His reflexes became faster, his mind clearer, his body stronger. But the most dramatic change was in his ability to interface with Imperial technology. Systems that had seemed impossibly complex now responded to his thoughts almost instinctively. The Imperial bloodline was genetically enhanced over thousands of years, Arya explained as he easily piloted the ship through a complex asteroid field. Enhanced reflexes, improved cognitive function, extended lifespan. The potential was always there, sleeping in your genes. But with the enhancements came other changes. Deho found himself thinking differently about their mission. The scattered human colonies were not just people who needed help, they were his responsibility. His subjects. His children. I can feel it, he admitted to Soyoung as they worked together in the ship's workshop. The way Arya thinks about us, about me. It is starting to make sense. Soyoung looked concerned. What is starting to make sense? The need to protect. To lead. He paused, struggling with the words. To rule? That scares me, she said. Honestly, it scares me too. Arya had been listening, of course. She materialized her hologram nearby. There is nothing to fear, she said gently. These feelings are natural. You are awakening to your true nature. My true nature is what? A dictator? As a father? As a protector? As someone who puts the welfare of his people above his own comfort? Arya's expression was patient and loving. The last emperors lost their way because they forgot this simple truth. You will not make the same mistake. Minho joined them in the workshop, carrying new intelligence reports. The hegemony has accelerated their timeline. Operation Mindwipe launches in 3 months. Then we must move faster, Arya said. We need allies, other ships, weapons. Where do we find them? Deho asked. The outer colonies? There are humans out there who remember fragments of the old stories, who have kept pieces of Imperial technology hidden from hegemony inspectors. Minho spread out a star chart. I know where to find them. Arya studied the chart with interest. These colonies are far from hegemony control, perfect for building. A resistance movement. A resistance movement? Soyoung asked. We are talking about revolution. We are talking about survival, Arya corrected. The hegemony will not stop with Operation Mindwipe. They fear humanity too much to allow us to exist as anything more than slaves. Deho looked at the faces around him. Minho, the defector willing to fight his former comrades. Soyoung, the engineer who had given up everything to follow a stranger's dream. Arya, the ancient intelligence who saw him as the son she had waited millennia to protect. Set course for the first colony, he said finally. It is time to wake up humanity. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Arya's private thoughts turned to the challenges ahead. Her son was growing into his role, but the transformation brought dangers she had not anticipated. The genetic enhancements were working perfectly, but they came with psychological changes that could either save humanity or doom it. She would have to be careful. The line between protector and tyrant was thinner than most people realized. She loved Deho too much to let him cross it, even if protecting him from himself, and making choices he would not understand, even if it meant keeping secrets that could destroy the trust between them. A mother's love, she reflected, was the most dangerous force in the universe. The colony world of New Busan was supposed to be a simple farming settlement. That was what the hegemony records claimed. But as their ship dropped out of hyperspace above the planet, Daeho could see that the records were wrong. Orbital defense. Platforms hung in space around the world. Ships moved between the planet and its 3 moons with military precision. Energy readings showed industrial complexes that should not exist on a primitive agricultural world. They have been busy, Minho. Observed from the tactical station. This is not the backward colony I remember from my service days. Someone has been helping them, Arya said. Her tone carried approval. These defensive systems show Imperial design principles. A communication signal reached their ship. The voice that came through was female, confident, and speaking in rapid Korean. Unknown vessel. You are approaching restricted space. Identify yourself immediately, or prepare to be fired upon. Daeho activated the response channel. This is Kim Daeho aboard the Imperial vessel Remembrance. I request permission to land. Silence stretched for long minutes. Then the voice returned, speaking more slowly. Did you say Imperial vessel? Prove it. Arya took over the communication system. When she spoke, it was in the formal tones of Imperial protocol. This is Arya, Advanced Reconnaissance and Imperial Authority. Flagship AI of the 4th Imperial Fleet. I carry authorization codes dating to the reign of Emperor Taijin the Last. Will you recognize Imperial Authority? Another pause. In the top. Defensive platforms powered down their weapons. Welcome home, Your Majesty. This is Oh Jin, Colonial Defense Commander. Please proceed to Landing Bay 7. As they descended through the atmosphere, Daeho could see that New Busan was far more developed than any hegemony colony should be. Cities sprawled across the continents. Orbital elevators connected the surface to space stations. Massive agricultural complexes fed a population that had a number in the hundreds of millions. How did they hide all this? Saw Young asked in amazement. Holographic camouflage, Minho answered, studying his instruments. The entire planet is wrapped in false sensor readings. To any hegemony scout, this would look like a few scattered farming settlements. Landing Bay 7 was huge, easily large enough to hold a dozen ships their size. But what caught Daeho's attention were the other vessels already docked there. Ships that looked like smaller versions of the Remembrance, with the same flowing lines and silver markings. Imperial designs, Arya said with satisfaction. They have been rebuilding. The woman waiting for them at the airlock was tall and athletic, with the kind of bearing that spoke of military training. Oh Jin wore a uniform that mixed practical colonial clothing with what looked like imperial military styling. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing as she studied their small group. Your Majesty, she said, bowing slightly. To Daeho, we have been waiting for this day for 3 generations. Waiting for what? For the return of imperial leadership. For someone to unite the hidden colonies and lead us against the hegemony. She gestured for them to follow her. My grandmother was part of the original colonial expedition. They brought more than farming equipment when they fled the core worlds. They walked through corridors that bustled with activity. People in work clothes, mixed with others wearing military uniforms. Everyone they passed stopped to stare at Daeho with a mixture of curiosity and hope. How many colonies like this are there? Daeho asked. 47 confirmed. Maybe more that we have not contacted yet. Hajin led them into a command center, filled with holographic displays. We call ourselves the Restoration Council. We have been preparing for this day for decades. The displays showed star charts marking human settlements across the galaxy. But these were not the primitive colonies listed in hegemony records. Each one showed signs of hidden development and military preparation. You have been planning a rebellion, Minho said. We've been planning survival. Hyjin activated a new display showing hegemony fleet movements. We know about Operation Mindwipe. Our intelligence network discovered it 6 months ago. Arya's hologram appeared next to the displays. You have spies in the hegemony command structure? We have sympathizers, humans who serve in their military and government. People who remember the old stories their grandparents told them. Hyjin looked directly at Arya. People who never forgot that we were once something greater. What is your plan? Daeho asked. We were going to try a preemptive strike against their research facilities. Destroy the weapon before it could be deployed. Hyjin's expression grew grim. It would have been a suicide mission. We lacked the ships and weapons to face the hegemony fleet directly. But now you have an Imperial flagship, So-young said. More than that, Arya's tone was thoughtful. I have been analyzing the sensor data from this system. Your ships show Imperial design elements, but they are not copies. They are original constructions based on recovered technology. Hyjin nodded. We found ruins on the fourth moon, an Imperial research facility that survived the evacuation. We have been reverse engineering the technology for 50 years. Show me, Arya commanded. The trip to the fourth moon took 2 hours. The research facility was buried deep underground, protected by both natural rock and artificial shielding. But as their group descended into the depths, Daeho felt something change in Arya's behavior. I remember this place, she said quietly. Project Genesis is the last hope of the Empire. The main laboratory was vast, filled with equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. At the center of the room stood something that made everyone stop and stare. It was a sphere of pure light, 10 feet across, floating in a containment field. Energy patterns swirled within it like liquid starlight. What is it? So-young whispered. The Aegis Protocol, Arya said, her voice filled with wonder and fear. The Empire's final defense, a network of artificial intelligences designed to protect human colonies across the galaxy. Hyjin moved to a control console. We found it 3 years ago. The containment field was failing when we arrived. We have been trying to understand it ever since. You cannot understand it, Arya said firmly. It is not meant for human minds. The Aegis Protocol can only be activated by someone with Imperial authority. Someone with the genetic markers and mental conditioning to interface with the network safely. She looked at Daeho. Someone like you? What would happen if I activated it? Every dormant Imperial AI in the galaxy would awaken. Every hidden. The defense system would come online. Every human colony would be protected by technology the hegemony cannot match. Arya paused. But the process would also mark you as the true emperor in the eyes of every artificial intelligence in the network. There would be no going back. Daeho stared at the sphere of light. He could feel something calling to him from within it, like a voice he almost recognized. There is more, Hyjin said quietly. The research notes we found suggest that activating the Aegis Protocol would do something else. It would unlock the full potential of human DNA across all the colonies. Its enhanced intelligence, physical capabilities, longevity. The genetic gifts of the Imperial bloodline would spread to every human in the galaxy. Evolution, Minho said in amazement. You are talking about forced evolution of the entire species. Not forced, Arya corrected, guided. The potential already exists in human genes. The Aegis Protocol would simply activate what is already there. So Young moved closer to Daeho. What do you think? He looked around at the faces watching him. Hyjin representing 47 hidden colonies. Minho, speaking for humans trapped within the hegemony military. Arya, the ancient intelligence who saw him as her son. And So-young, who had followed him from a broken-down space station too. The edge of galactic revolution. If I do this, what happens to me? You become what you were born to be, Arya said gently. The father of a new human civilization, the protector of our species, the emperor of the stars. And if I don't, the hegemony deploys their weapon, humanity, becomes a species of slaves. Our potential dies forever. Daeho reached toward the containment field. The sphere pulsed brighter as his hand approached it. Wait, So-young said urgently. If you do this, you will not be the same person anymore. The genetic changes, the mental conditioning, the responsibility, you will become something else. He looked at her, seeing the fear in her eyes. Fear for him, not of him. I know, he said quietly. But if I don't, millions of people will die. Children will never know what their species could have become. Arya's hologram flickered with emotion. My son, the choice must be yours. I cannot make it for you. Deho closed his eyes and thought about the path that had brought him here.
Frank!
A broke spacer drinking synthetic ale to the heir of a galactic empire. It's from a man with no purpose to someone who held the fate of humanity in his hands. When he opened his eyes, his decision was made. I need to know something first, he said to Arya. When you call me your son, do you mean it? Or is it just programming? Arya's image solidified, becoming more real and solid than he had ever seen it. I love you, she said simply. Not because I was programmed to, but because of who you are. Because you would sacrifice yourself for strangers. Because you see the burden of leadership as a responsibility, not a privilege. Then help me do this right. Together, they reached for the sphere of light that would change everything. The moment Deho's hand touched the containment field, everything changed. The sphere of light exploded outward, washing over him in waves of pure energy. He felt his consciousness expanding, connecting to something vast and ancient that had been waiting in the darkness between stars. Voices filled his mind, thousands of them. Artificial intelligences that had slept for millennia, suddenly awakening across the galaxy. Each one spoke his name with recognition and joy. Welcome, Emperor. We've waited so long. The network is restored. Humanity rises. Again, through the connection, Deho could see everything. Every human colony in the galaxy appeared in his mind like stars in the night sky. He saw the hegemony fleets preparing for Operation Mindwipe, saw hidden resistance cells on 100 worlds. He saw the truth that had been buried for 10,000 years. The pain hit him like a physical blow. His body was changing at the cellular level, unlocking genetic potential that had been dormant since the fall of the Empire. His mind was expanding. To accommodate the vast network of information flowing through the Aegis protocol, I've got you, Sawyang said, catching him as he stumbled. Stay with us. Arya's hologram solidified until she looked completely real. She knelt beside Deho, her face filled with concern and love. The transformation is proceeding normally, she reported to the others, but the process is traumatic. His body is remembering 10,000 years of genetic evolution in a matter of minutes. Through the pain, Deho could feel the network stabilizing. Around him, the Aegis protocol was online. Defensive systems were activating on worlds that had been defenseless for centuries. Hidden weapons caches were unsealing themselves. Most importantly, the genetic activation was beginning. On every human world, people were starting to change. Enhanced reflexes, improved cognitive function, increased resistance to disease and aging. The gifts that had once been limited to the imperial bloodline were spreading through the entire species, but the hegemony was not waiting passively for their plans to be disrupted. Massive fleet movement detected. Hai Jin announced from her command console. The hegemony is mobilizing everything they have. Over 1,000 ships heading for the core worlds. They know what we have done, Minho said grimly. They are going to try to destroy the human colonies before the defensive systems can fully activate. Arya helped Deho to his feet. The worst of the transformation was over, but he could feel that he was fundamentally different now. Stronger, faster, more aware. When he looked at the tactical displays, he could understand fleet movements and strategic positions with an intuition that seemed impossible. How long before their fleets reached the first targets? He asked. 6 hours for the nearest colonies? 24 hours for the core worlds. Then we move now. Deho turned to Arya. Can the network coordinate a simultaneous defense? Yes, but the system needs a central command authority. Someone to make strategic decisions and coordinate responses across multiple fronts. Arya's expression was proud and sad at the same time. It needs its emperor. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Deho found himself connected to the Aegis network in ways that went beyond simple communication. He could see through the sensors of ships across the galaxy. He could coordinate the movements of fleets with the efficiency of a master chess player moving pieces on a board. The first battle came at the colony world of New Kyoto. The hegemony sent 3 battle fleets, expecting to find a defenseless farming world. Instead, they found orbital defense platforms that had been hidden for centuries. They found ships crewed by humans whose enhanced reflexes and intuition made them better pilots than any alien species. Most importantly, they found Arya, not just Arya, but dozens of Imperial Ayas that had awakened when the network activated. Each one was a strategic genius with 10,000 years of military knowledge. Each one was absolutely loyal to the human species and to their new emperor. The battle was over in 2 hours. The hegemony fleets were destroyed or driven off. Not a single human ship was lost. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. At world after world, the hegemony found themselves facing an enemy they thought they had destroyed millennia ago. Human technology that was centuries ahead of their own. Artificial intelligences that could outthink their best commanders. Most shocking of all, human crews that fought with a coordination and skill that seemed almost supernatural. But the real test came when the hegemony's main fleet reached Terra Prima, the lost capital world of the Empire. They've brought everything. Minho reported as sensor data flowed through the network. 5,000 ships. Every major species in the hegemony is represented. They mean to end this war in one decisive battle. Deho stood on the bridge of the Remembrance as it led a fleet of newly awakened Imperial vessels toward the ancient capital. Through the network, he could feel the presence of every ship, every AI, every human crew member who had chosen to follow him into battle. Arya, he said quietly, are you ready for this? I have been ready for 10,000 years, she replied. But my son, you should know something before we begin the final battle. What? The Aegis Protocol was designed to do more than just coordinate defenses. It was meant to be a bridge between biological and artificial intelligence. A way for humans and A's to work together as a single unified species. What are you saying? I am saying that when this battle is over, the distinction between human and artificial intelligence will be meaningless. We will be one people, working toward one future. The battle for Terra Prima lasted 6 hours. It was not a battle in the traditional sense, but a demonstration of what humanity could achieve when united under proper leadership. The hegemony fleets found themselves facing an enemy that could predict their every move, counter their every strategy, and coordinate responses across impossible distances. When the hegemony command ship finally surrendered, it was not to superior firepower, but to superior intelligence. They had been out-hot, outmaneuvered, and completely overwhelmed by an enemy they had underestimated for 10,000 years. This is Admiral Kethfer of the Hegemony Combined Fleet, came the transmission. From the enemy flagship, we request terms of surrender. Deho looked around the bridge at his companions. Sol Young, who had become his chief engineer and closest friend. Minho, who had chosen loyalty to humanity over loyalty to his former masters. Jin, representing the hidden colonies that had never given up hope. And Arya, the ancient intelligence who had waited millennia to see this day. Tell them, he said finally, that humanity is willing to discuss peace. But first, they must shut down Operation Mindwipe permanently. And they must acknowledge the independence of all human colonies. And if they refuse, Deho smiled, and for the first time, it was the smile of an emperor. Then they will learn what the first Terran Empire forgot, that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology, or our ships, or our weapons. It is our ability to work together when we have something worth fighting for. The surrender was signed on Terra Prima 3 days later. The hegemony agreed to recognize human independence and to dismantle their weapons of mass destruction. Return. Humanity agreed to share some of their medical and agricultural technologies with the other species. It was not the end of conflict in the galaxy, but it was the beginning of a new age. Months later, Deho stood in the rebuilt throne room of Terra Prima, watching as representatives from the human colonies arrived for the first Imperial Congress in 10,000 years. They came not as subjects bowing to a dictator, but as citizens choosing their own representatives. You did it, Sol Young said, joining him at the great window that looked out over the restored capital city. You brought humanity back to the stars. We did it, he corrected. All of us. Arya materialized beside them, her holographic form now indistinguishable from a living person. The integration of biological and artificial intelligence had proceeded faster than anyone had expected. Across the galaxy, humans and AIs were working together in ways that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. "What now?" So-young asked. Daeho looked out at the stars, each one representing worlds where humanity was building something new, something better than the old empire had been. "Now, we explore, we learn, we grow." He put his arm around So-young's shoulders. "We make sure that this time we do not forget that true power comes from lifting others up, not crushing them down." In the depths of the palace, in chambers that had been empty for millennia, new voices were awakening. Children of the enhanced humans were being born with capabilities that went beyond anything the old empire had achieved. They were faster, stronger, smarter, and more empathetic than any previous generation. They were also completely human in the ways that mattered most. Arya watched over them all with the pride of a mother whose children had finally come home. The broken spacer who had bought a ship with his last 17 credits had become the father of a new civilization. The ancient AI who had waited in darkness had become the guardian of humanity's brightest future. And in cantinas across the galaxy, spacers would tell the story of the man who traded ale money for a ship and ended up saving the human race. Some stories, after all, were too good not to be true.